going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. So it has been an extremely busy last couple months, as y'all can probably tell, because I ain't been putting very many videos up. But rest assured, that freaking part of the channel is well behind us. Now it's time to start loading you down with all kinds of content. So I want to start out with bringing y'all up to snuff on where we are at right now. As y'all can probably see right behind me, old Killin has finally made her way back home. Now we haven't done absolutely everything that I wanted to do to it, but we did damn near close to it. We made some very good progress. But she is back home in her resting place. So now it's time to start putting some time into editing some videos and bringing y'all up to speed on what's going on and letting you guys see what the hell we've been up to the past couple months. But before I do that, I do want to thank y'all that have been subscribing to my channel. We got a lot more subscribers over the past month or so. I'm not really sure what caused that, because I ain't been putting nothing up. But those of you that are new to the channel, thank you very much for subscribing. Thank you very much for the views, and I appreciate y'all's support. For my OG subscribers, thank you for hanging in there, because I know there ain't been much on the channel. But anyways, where we're at now, obviously all Killin, it's back here at the Killin compound. The engine is running. We made our way over to the Florida truck meet 2 weekends ago, and she put on a phenomenal show, and we weren't even really running it all that hard. Now, those of you that already follow the channel pretty religiously already know I run an EFI Live tuner in the truck. Now, that was with the old motor, and I'm also running the same tuner on the new motor. Now, it's got different tuning in it, but it's still EFI Live. Now, during those truck tug of wars that we were doing at the Florida truck meet, those of y'all that saw those videos on social media, if you didn't see any of them, here's a little bit of it.
This is the break-in procedure here tonight. What do you think about that, ladies and gentlemen? How's that looking?
Oh yeah, she was motherfucking ripping. She was tearing it up, I tell you that. And I was only running around 600 horsepower. So my tune has got 5-position switch. My tunes go from 400 horsepower, 600, 800, 1,000, and 1,200. So I did the break-in period where I was just cruising around with the roll-around wheels on the truck. Did that on the 400 horsepower tune. And then we were doing the truck tug of war at the Florida truck meet. I was running on the 600 horsepower tune. The last tug that I did on the 800 horsepower tune. But I barely did anything because the trucks weren't really moving all that much. So I didn't even really get a chance to really get a feel for it or really get into it. But the majority of those videos were all on the 600 horsepower tune. So 600 horsepower. Yeah, that motor can do freaking 1,200 horsepower. That means, and we're at freaking 1,200 horsepower, double the horsepower. Oh, God, it's going to be freaking sick. But anyway, so she did really good at that truck meet. We ended up bringing her back to the Mad Scientist home laboratory. We did a couple little things to button her up. I had to finish wiring in my winch. Had to do just some little odds and ends things that we figured out that were wrong when we were at the Florida truck meet. There's a couple coolant lines I forgot to clamp down. Whoops, little screw up there. But once we got all that dialed in, we brought her back over to the Killin compound actually yesterday. And that was quite a freaking process in itself. I mean, gotta fill y'all in. So there's a lot y'all are gonna be filled in on these next few videos because like I said, I've been grinding my butt off for the past couple months. So I gotta bring y'all up to speed. Well, when we were first putting the big wheels back on the truck, we finished it and everything dialed in, at least good enough to go to the Florida truck meet. And then I brought the truck back here to the Killin compound to put her big wheels back on her. And while we were doing that, I was checking my tire pressure for the truck tugs. Usually I run my tires around 12, 13 PSI. There you go, guys. Everyone wants to know, hey, what do you run your tires at? Do you deflate them for the truck tugs? Do you inflate them for... I run about 13 PSI 9 times out of 10. So I was checking them all, and I noticed all of them were around 12, 13 PSI. One of them had like 2 PSI in it. So I kind of figured there was going to be a problem. Luckily, it held together, and it didn't deflate or anything during the whole Florida truck meet and during the truck tug of wars. But as luck would have it, as soon as I got it back to the Mad Scientist home laboratory after the meet, the truck sat for like 2 days, came to go start working on it again, and she was freaking flat. She was almost sitting on the rim. So I don't know, maybe doing those truck tug of wars kind of got things to unseat themselves a little bit. Maybe when I aired it back up here at my house, I got lucky and it held air for a little bit during the truck show. But then as soon as we got back to the Mad Scientist home laboratory, bam, she was sitting on the rim. So I aired it up, it flattened out over the course of like a day, aired it up again, flattened out again. So I was like, all right, there's definitely a problem. Well, we ended up bringing the truck back home, and I contacted Boulevard Tire. Actually got the name of them from the Mad Scientist. He actually used that company to mount his tires when he first originally built the Adrenaline Mega Truck. But I contacted them. They said to go ahead and leave the tire on the truck, leave the whole wheel on the truck, put it in my front yard, and they would bring a mobile vehicle that would come and actually swap out the tube right there in my front yard. So I didn't even know you could do that. I thought I was gonna have to take the wheel off, take it to them. They said I could do that, but it wouldn't save me all that much money. It might save me $100. So it's worth $100 to me to leave that freaking wheel on the truck, not have to worry about getting it off, getting the truck back here, getting on jack stands, then figuring out how to get a 650-pound wheel and tire onto a trailer, carting it. Yeah, it was definitely worth the $100 for me to go ahead and just have them come here. And it worked out freaking perfectly. So I took a little bit of videos while they were doing that tube swap, because it was kind of interesting. I didn't know you could even do that. So check this out. Pretty freaking wild, dude. So he's got the tube out. Now we're trying to figure out why it ripped. We're trying to figure out what the hell caused it. Everything seems fine. Well, a little bit of finesse. Finally got the freaking valve stem through. New tube's getting aired up. Quite the freaking operation. Yeah, so they actually took that mobile truck, parked it parallel right next to my mega truck, and then used the crane system that's attached to that tire changing truck, and actually used the crane system arm to push against my tire. Then he started hitting it with a sledgehammer, finally got the bead to pop. And once the tire was totally deflated, obviously, got the bead to pop, and then he used big giant spoons and crowbars to actually get the tire, get the rubber tire. I can kind of give you a visual with the truck, actually, make it much easier for y'all to understand. So the mega truck was parked parallel to my front yard. So the street was running this way, as you could see in a couple videos I showed you. But they parked the truck here, and then they had that arm come over. And all he did was he used the arm of the crane to actually shove against the tire and put some pressure on it once it was all deflated. And then as he was putting pressure on it, he started just whacking it with a freaking sledgehammer. Once he hit it a good few times, finally the bead popped, and then the tire kind of sucked in a little bit. Then what he did, and this is all with it, I forgot a little part, he also used the bottle jack to kind of jack up the truck a little bit to get the weight off of the tire before he started any of this. But then once he had the bead popped and he had the tire kind of sucked in, then he used these big crowbars and spoons and actually shoved in here and got this outer tire to come over the lip of the rim to where basically like removing the tire about halfway. So the tire kind of slid off a little bit, and then you got the cavity because the tire was kind of like now sitting like this. So he was able to reach up in there, fish that inner tube out, fish a new inner tube in, line up the valve stem, and then just kind of reverse the whole process. Use those spoons to kind of push the bead back on. Bam! Once he got the freaking tire back on, and went ahead and just started airing her up. And look at that. Ready to rock and roll. And she's holding air because we did this yesterday, and she's still holding air like a champ. Freaking bitching. But what a process. So now that you guys are kind of aware of where we're at and how we stand now, so the truck's back home at the Killin compound. Big wheels are on it, obviously. Faceplates, everything's on it, still from the truck show. The engine is running. I definitely haven't let that engine rip too much yet. And that one truck took it where I got on it a little bit, but it was only 600 horsepower. We were barely opening the can of whoop ass. We didn't even get to the whole case of whoop ass that we got. But the engine's running great, no problems at all. We've got the roll cage installed. I've got my bumper. Now it's freshly painted up. It's got a brand new 15,000 pound Warren winch in it. Pretty freaking bitch, and a lot better than our Smitty built winch that we had in there before. We also got the cooler racks all installed. Cooler racks, I think I talked about in one of the earlier Killin Resurrection videos, where I built this rack in the back of the truck where it holds all these different coolers for a power steering cooler, an oil cooler, and a transmission cooler. We got that all installed. We got the new intercoolers installed. We got the new radiators installed. What else did we install? Everything that goes along with that new engine, the new freaking catch can for the crankcase vents. There's a whole lot of, the new power steering pump. So anyways, everything is pretty much dialed in. The only thing that we basically skipped out on was we didn't finish doing the new 4-links. We're going to get to that probably in the next couple weeks. You guys, I kind of told you guys that we're going to be doing something cool for it, but I still haven't even told you what we're doing. It's not nothing too crazy, but it's pretty bitching. So we got that. We still got to finish up. We ended up deciding not to do the fiberglass fenders. I know I was pretty amped up about that, but as y'all can see, they're still here in my barn, or like returned to my barn. We were going to put those on the truck, but the mad scientist and I kind of got to talking about it, and we started talking to a couple other fiberglass experts and a couple other people that have messed with that stuff before. And really, it doesn't make sense to do that to my truck. My truck body, for the most part, is still fine. A couple of little character marks here and there, but it doesn't make sense to cut up a perfectly good truck body to put those on. And from what I hear, those are a real freaking nightmare to install. It takes hours and hours of Bondo work and fitting and refitting and shaping and forming. And I don't think we should do that right now because the truck looks freaking sick as it is. Look how tight she looks. She looks so freaking good. She's got fresh new ceramic coat on all the painting. We did that a couple weeks ago. So she is looking very, very, very pretty. Look at that sun. Oh, that spark. You can see that metallic in the paint when the sun hits it. Oh, yeah. So she's looking great. There's no sense in cutting up something that already looks pretty damn good. And to be honest with y'all, the mad scientist kind of brought up another solid point. We actually held up the fender flares when we were back over at his shop like a week ago, and we're kind of comparing with the body. There's going to be a little difference, but not as drastic of one as I was thinking. So that's really a whole lot of work for kind of a whole lot of nothing. So I'm still going to hold on to these fenders. I'm not going to get rid of them. I'm more thinking if I ever get really froggy and really goof up my truck, like where the whole bed side is completely caved in, or where the front fenders are kind of goofed up, then we'll go ahead and, like, if there's no other option, if you can't fix it, then we'll just cut the panel off and put the fiberglass one on. So that's what the game plan long-term is going to be with these fiberglass fenders. I don't think I'm going to put them on prior to that happening. So hopefully that doesn't ever happen. Hopefully I don't ever goof the truck up. But if I ever do, got brand new freaking bed sides, and I got brand new front fenders. They're right up there that I can put on the truck. So that's what's going to happen with that, but we decided to hold off on that for now. But aside from those two items, we literally have done everything we want to do to the Killin Mega Truck. She's got basically brand new axles, brand new axle shafts, those Overson Engineering badass axle shafts we did like, I don't know, 10 episodes ago on the Killin Resurrection series. She's got a brand new, fully built, twin turbo, 1,000 horsepower freaking SoCal diesel Duramax engine in her. It's got a whole new cooling system. I mean, everything. Got a roll cage in it. Got new console, more speakers, more amplifiers, all kinds of good stuff. So anyways, most of this stuff has already kind of been covered in the Killin Resurrection. We've got a couple more episodes that I'm going to put out, starting with this one, but I'm going to take a little twist on how I'm doing those episodes. Before I was filming it all as I was doing it, but it was making everything drag out really, 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 really long. When it was all said and done, we actually did the math on this yesterday. The truck got worked on over at the Mad Scientist Home Laboratory for a total of 144 days, from the day I brought it into his shop to the day I brought it back home. That's a good little minute. That's a little over 20 and a half weeks. I also did another little calculation. Since the day the motor blew up till today, the first time she's back home with her new motor, with the big wheels on, like able to go to events, that was 406 days. Yeah, 406 days. Yeah, good little bit. So after taking all that into account, come on, y'all got to cut me some slack. I mean, that's why the last 2 months of doing the Resurrection, I wasn't filming every little bit. I filmed a lot of it, and y'all are going to see it over the next few episodes. But that's why I kind of am taking a different twist on how I'm doing it, because I had to speed this process up a little bit. I missed you guys. I want to have my freaking truck back. So I had to hurry up and just grind, knuckle down, try to film as much as I could, but didn't put anything on the channel, just really knuckle down to get the truck ready to rock and roll. So mission accomplished. The truck is ready to motherfucking rip. So the first question I'm getting asked a whole lot already, when's the next event that we're going to? Our next event is going to be April 22nd. We're going to the barn in Sanford, Florida for the Trucks Gone Wild Truck Tugs. And why that's going to be a particular super motherfucking bitchin' event. The barn is kind of like our home grounds a little bit. The barn is actually where the first truck tug of war that I ever did with the Killin Mega Truck, I did it there, like back in 2019 or whenever that was. And that was actually the first time that Trucks Gone Wild had ever done the truck tug of wars at the barn. So it's kind of cool. We both got our V card pulled there. Our barn V card was pulled at the same time. Kind of neat. But so that's why it's kind of cool, because we'll be able to return to doing what we love, it's my freaking jam. Freaking truck tug of wars, y'all know it. So it's pretty cool because of that, but it's also cool because April 23rd is actually your boy's birthday. So at midnight, y'all better be there ready to do some shots with me, because after we put on a super bitchin' show with our brand new twin turbo, fully built SoCal diesel Duramax, then we're gonna go into the barn and get our freaking party on, y'all. So hope you all ready to come party with me. But enough about all that. Let's get to what you guys freaking started watching this video for, the Killin Resurrection. So I'm gonna pick up right where we left off. The last episode that we did, we actually had just dropped the engine into the truck. So I'm gonna go through and I'll show you some of the time-lapse footage of us rigging the motor. There wasn't really a whole lot to time-lapse of it because a lot of it was kind of plug and play. That was a big reason why we stuck with the LMM platform, because it was literally the same engine platform that we pulled from the truck. So just about everything linked right up. I mean, granted, we did some customization, and this motor is definitely way over the top from our old motor. But as far as the engine wiring harness and sensors and all that sort of stuff, all that stuff pretty much lined up with what was already in there. So there wasn't a whole lot to really show you. We were just pushing connectors together and snapping them shut. That was a lot of it. But with the level of this new engine is at, there were quite a few things that we had to change too. For instance, the wiring in the passenger side, I guess it'd be like the forwardmost, like towards the windshield corner of the engine bay. I had to completely rewire that whole thing because originally it looked like this. Now, as y'all could probably guess, that's right where my hood stack pipe is going to be running, right off that big giant 88 millimeter freaking turbski. So it's going to probably get a little hot, especially as I start getting a little froggy with that truck and I start letting it rip a little bit. I would imagine it's going to get a little toasty in that corner of the engine bay. So all that wiring I wanted to remove and kind of relocate pretty much all of it. So that was where I started the time-lapse process. First, I went through and started moving all those wires, moving those fuse blocks. Actually used a different aftermarket fuse block as opposed to that GMC one that was already in there, and then relocated where all those battery connections are. And so that's what this time lapse is now. So ready, set, here we go. Time-lapse doesn't really give it a whole lot of justice, but it took a minute to get all that done. But the end result is right on over here. See, all that fuse block and everything that was all back there, that's all been removed. All those battery wires that were running across the back firewall there, those have all been removed. And I actually relocated some of those connections, like the fuse block. This is now the new fuse block to replace that GMC factory one that used to be back yonder. And then I rerouted all of the battery connections, and then you guys will notice this throughout the next couple episodes. Just about everything I did, I covered in this really badass fiberglass heat shielding. This stuff is good to like 1300 degrees, which I sure hope that my engine bay never gets to 1300 degrees, because we have a lot of problems coming our way if that happens. But anyway, so everything's coated in that badass coating. And then as you can see towards the end of that time lapse, I have relocated where the junction posts were, where kind of the battery connectors connect up to one another, and they're actually now down over yonder. That's where that red boot is, right over there. Now again, all that was extremely necessary because, as you can see, we didn't have a whole lot of room to work with that freaking hood stack pipe. It's right up next to the firewall, and with where that turbo ended up being, I didn't want a chance having wires running right there. Even if I put the badass coating on them, I didn't want to keep that part of the engine bay as clear as possible because, as I said, it gets a little freaking warm from time to time. So mission accomplished though. And yeah, this is what she looks like now. Pretty freaking sick. So I'm gonna go through, and don't worry, I'll explain all this stuff, what's going on here, because there's a lot of other components that are now here that were not here before. So I'll get to that in these future resurrection videos. But right now we're just talking about the engine rigging and the wiring and kind of what went down there. Now the next part of the engine rigging process was getting that new intercooler installed and that new custom radiator. So as far as the intercooler, it was a Mishimoto intercooler. It's a drop-in intercooler. It is a little bit bigger than your factory intercooler that comes on one of these 2010 2500 GMC trucks. It's a little bit thicker, definitely a bit more efficient, and it's got aluminum tanks on it, which makes it much more robust and able to handle the pressure a hell of a lot better than the factory one did. As far as the radiator, I did another episode about that. Forgot what the episode number is in the Killin Resurrection series, but it's called like Be Cool or Keep It Cool, Keeping Her Cool or something like that, where I explain that whole custom radiator that Mr. Garth over there at TCP Performance, he actually fabricated that for us. Now, what that radiator is and why it's so different, I took my factory radiator out of the truck back when the engine blew up, boxed it up and sent it to Mr. Garth, and asked him to go ahead and make me a new radiator. I told him how much room, I sent him a bunch of pictures, like how much extra space we had between the radiator and the fan shroud, and I wanted to go ahead and make use of every inch of space that we could get there. So he made it a little bit thicker, and what else is really cool is it's a triple pass radiator. Now, what is a triple pass radiator? Well, what they do is it's very similar to a regular radiator with one little twist. You've got your tanks on either side. Basically, the coolant goes into one side, goes across all the fins of the radiator, gets cooled down, goes into the other tank, and then from that tank goes into your engine. Well, what they do with a triple pass radiator, there's a dam system that's kind of welded into those tanks to where the fluid actually, the coolant actually only goes up to like the top third or so, and then goes across all those fins, goes into that tank, and there's another dam. Allows the fluid to drop down, then it goes across all those fins again. And there's another dam, allows the fluid to go down. So it triple passes by the fins 3 different times. So the efficiency goes through the freaking roof when you've got a radiator like that. The coolant gets much, much, much cooler before it actually makes its way back into the motor. So ideally, it'll help that overheating problem I used to have all the time where I'd let her rip until she'd boil over. Hopefully this motor will not be boiling over because I think that is also what contributed to her blowing up. I don't want this new motor to blow up. So that's why we're doing everything we can to try to keep her cool. So all that being explained, that's what our next step of the process is actually getting this new intercooler, this new Mishimoto intercooler, and this new custom TCP Performance radiator installed into the truck. And they weren't just drop in. I mean, Mr. Garth did follow instructions or did exactly what I wanted him to do. He made it follow the exact footprint of the original radiator, but with all the other custom stuff that came along with that engine and the way the fan shroud ended up fitting, plus having this new intercooler be a little thicker, having all this work together, it didn't just drop right in. It was a freaking process. We put both the radiator and the intercooler in the front stack of the truck, and then we had to do some slicing and dicing a little bit. Then we had to pull them back out, do some more slicing and dicing, put them back into the truck. They still didn't fit quite exactly the way we wanted to. So it took about 3 different tries before we finally got them sitting exactly the way we wanted, to where they're bolting up nice and tight and secure, but they also weren't putting excess pressure on one another. So that was the next step. Now that we had the wiring harness connected and had a lot of the battery connection points all relocated so it was away from the hood stack area, and we had the intercooler and radiator installed, then it was time to start hooking up the rest of the intercooler piping and the rest of the plumbing that came along with that Whirly Custom Fabrications S400 Overstock Twin Turbo Kit. So that's what we went to next. Final result is what you see here. It looks I'm not gonna lie, Whirly Custom Fab freaking cranks it out of the park with their kits. It looks freaking pristine. Look at how sexy that is. It's all color matched, powder coated to match the truck. So a lot of this stuff, most of it is what comes with their twin turbo kit. This pipe, that pipe, obviously like the way the turbo sits on the pedestal and everything. The expansion tank for the coolant, that all is part of their twin turbo kit. This extra pipe here is another part that I actually end up getting from them. In order to install it, it's a little bit more fab work. It connects right up with a boot, right to your radiator. But in order to have it connect up, you've actually got to change out the top of your thermostat housing, which is right down in here. And you get a different cap, and it allows, it's kind of hard to see. There you go. You can kind of see the boot. So it allows a boot to be able to connect up. Because before, with the factory thermostat housing cap, it wouldn't allow this pipe to hook up like this because you've got a kind of a crappier pipe that comes from GMC right from the factory, where it kind of connects up right to the side. So it's a little bit of a process to install this, but God, look at how freaking sick it looks. Everything's all nice and dressed up, powder coated to match the truck. Looks on motherfucking point. Another thing I want to bring up that was kind of involved with that WC Fab twin turbo kit, it was actually some parts that we ended up getting from Vibrant Performance. They're another one of our sponsors. They take phenomenal care of us. They hook us up with all kinds of stuff for this engine, and they're also hooking us up with all kinds of badass parts for the mad scientist, what he's got cooking up for the Adrenaline Mega Truck. But let me show you one of the key points that they end up hooking us up with for this twin turbo kit. It's these super bitchin' HD clamps. You can see it right there. These clamps are freaking awesome the way they work. They are so badass. So basically what it is, it's a connection point for connecting your intercooler piping. It's also over here on this hot side intercooler pipe where it actually goes in between the turbo and goes down to the lower part of the intercooler. So this is the hot side intercooler pipe. I've got one of these Vibrant clamps right down here too. Spin it around where you can kind of see it. See Vibrant Performance right there. So these things are so freaking sick. I cannot say enough things. There's a couple other companies that have tried to do something similar, but Vibrant Performance, they're the OG when it comes to these clamps. Now let me get down, I've got a couple extra ones, so let me grab one of their clamp systems while they're still in the box so I can show you kind of what all the kit comes with, but it's called their HD clamp system and it is freaking sick. So just so you've got some comparison, if you don't have a connection point like that, then you're stuck doing the boot, which is a connection similar to this. There's another one down there, you can kind of see it through this hole, where I've got a boot down there, which they're not ideal, but the ones from Whirly Custom Fab are far superior as opposed to the typical boots you'd get on like a GMC factory truck. So let me go down and grab one of those HD clamp systems, and then I'm gonna kind of explain the benefits and kind of why those things are so kick-ass and why we're so happy to have them part of Team Killin It. Okay, y'all, so what I have here is one of Vibrant Performance's HD clamp systems. Here's the part number if you want reference for it. We use 3-inch ones on the Killin It Mega Truck, but they come in multiple different sizes for different pipe diameters. But what comes in this kit is really freaking cool. So a little background first before I open the box up. Generally speaking, prior to Vibrant coming up with this design, you got 3 connection possibilities when it comes to hooking up your piping to your intercooler, to your turbos, what have you. So one option would be to just go ahead and weld it, which is awesome. It's not going to leak, providing you got a decent weld on there. It's not going to leak. It's not going to be any pinholes or anything like that. The problem with that is it doesn't really allow a whole lot of movement. Also, once it's welded, that's how it is. It's stuck. The only way to get it apart is you got to cut it. So if you want to remove a part, you want to take the intercooler out, you want to remove a turbo, you've got to cut those welds. And it doesn't really make sense to be welding piping directly onto the turbo. Let's be real, it doesn't make any sense. So the other way they hook it up is through V-bands. So say you're going to connect piping to your turbo. What you would do is go ahead and weld a flange onto the turbo output, and then you would go ahead and weld a flange onto your piping that you're trying to connect to, and then the V-band basically goes over top. So you'd have your flange and your flange, they both got lips to them. The lips kind of go together and the V-band goes over that. It's kind of in a V shape, that's why they call it a V-band. And as it tightens up, it squeezes those flanges together to where you don't get any leaks and where everything's nice and tight. Well, again, the downside of that, so where that has an upside to welding, is you can take it apart. All you gotta do is take that clamp off and you can take it apart. The downside to it is it's a very, very rigid mount. Now, the reason why that's a problem is because your engine is mounted with engine mounts. Now, it's pretty rigid, but there's a little bit of movement there. If there wasn't movement, then when the engine is vibrating and moving from running, then it'd be shaking the hell out of your truck, shaking your frame, and that's not good for welds to have rigid stuff vibrating like that. It puts a lot of stress on them unnecessarily. Also, your piping is coming off of the turbos, off of everything that's rigidly mounted to your engine. It's going down to your intercooler, for instance, and your intercooler has got a little bit of give to it because it's mounted to the frame of the truck, to where your engine is mounted to engine mounts. So there's a little more movement to the engine, maybe not quite as much movement to your intercooler. If they're shaking like that, that could cause something to crack, something to break, It's a lot of unnecessary strain on everything. So again, it has its purposes, having a V-band connection. We do have V-bands on the Killin Mega Truck with the way the twin turbo kit is set up, but it has a lot of negatives too because it doesn't allow for that movement. Now, if you want to be able to accommodate movement prior to Vibrant Performance coming up with this HD clamp design, you would use boots, which if you all seen some of my videos before, particularly when I was doing truck tug of wars and getting a decent amount of boost, or what I thought was a decent amount of boost at that time, if you don't have a real HD or hardcore boot, those boots can start to rip over time. If they get kind of hot or they expand and contract too much, or the elements kind of eat at them, because they are rubber, let's be honest. I mean, they start to wear a little bit, and then you end up getting a ripped intercooler boot, which means you have a boost leak. And I'm sure you all have seen trucks before where they're just barreling smoke out, but the truck doesn't have any power. Generally speaking, if he didn't blow his turbo, it's because he's got a ripped intercooler boot or a blown intercooler boot, where the boot is either ripped entirely, it's got a big hole in it, which I'm sure you guys have seen happen to us. If you guys have been following the channel for a little bit, it's happened to me in truck tug of wars with our old engine, where I had some Banks intercooler boots, and those boots, they would rip from time to time. So that sometimes would happen, or you get to where the intercooler boot just pulls off of the pipe or pulls onto whatever you got it connecting to. You usually got a rib on one of the connection, on both the connection points, so the boot would go over that rib, and then you've got a pipe clamp of some sort or a T-bolt clamp if you're really getting HD with it. Well, sometimes that still gives way and that boot can come off. So this Vibrant Performance HD clamp system completely eliminates all those sorts of problems. So let me show you what it is. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. They're a great sponsor to have for sure because they're so innovative. All right, so inside the box, this is what you get. You get your O-rings, which I'm gonna show you in a second what you do with them. But this is the HD clamp system. So it comes with this locking pin. Just got a little push button up top, and it moves a little ball bearing at the bottom. So you just go ahead and pull that out. The clamp opens up. I can do it without dropping it. Then you've got a sleeve, and then you've got your two mating points. So these mating points is what you would weld onto the two things you're trying to connect. So say you're trying to use it to connect to a turbo, for instance. You would go ahead and weld this onto the output of the turbo, and then you would go ahead and weld this onto the pipe that you're trying to connect. Now these two O-rings that we were just looking at just a second ago, these go into these little slots that are right here on these pieces. One O-ring goes here, one O-ring goes here. So now that you've got these two connecting points welded onto whatever it is that you're trying to connect together, you go ahead and put an O-ring in each of these grooves, mate them up to one another, and then you're gonna use this band. So this band kind of slips in between them, and it's always a good idea to put a little bit of grease on those O-rings to make sure they really seal up so you don't get any leaks. But then you slide this band over one, get it to where it slides over just past, then you'd be able to have your turbo, for instance, say this is the intercooler piping, then you'd be able to have your turbo come right up, mate to it. This band would slide over both of them. So now this band is kind of connecting the two, and it's basically making contact with that O-ring so it seals up. That's where your HD clamp comes in. Now it's perfectly machined to have this little band fit into that clamp, as well as be able to make contact with this little rib that is produced by that trough for the O-ring to sit into. So you've got your two connection points made up. Your band actually fits right on over like so. Bam, locks it shut. And then to make a nice solid connection, you've got this nice quick release pin, slips right in there, bam. That is a hardcore connection. It is not coming apart. No matter how much boost you throw at this, it's not gonna come ripping open. Now the real badass benefit of this is not only is it a real awesome connection that is not gonna come apart, but it allows a little bit of movement. So remember before when I was explaining how your intercooler could be moving a little bit, your engine's gonna be moving a little bit because it's running and vibrating and whatnot. Well, that's gonna allow these pipes to have a little bit of play, but they're still gonna seal up, they're not gonna leak, you're not gonna get any boost leaks. Freaking dialed the hell in. Very awesome setup. Very excited to have Vibrant Performance on Team Killin It, and very excited to be running these HD clamps on the new super bitchin' SoCal diesel twin turbo Duramax engine. So make sure you check out vibrantperformance.com where you can get all your HD clamps and you get all kinds of other stuff. They got all kinds of piping, fittings, different angles, different things you need for the different fab work that you could be doing. All right, y'all, so now that I've explained the Vibrant Performance HD clamp system and how that works with the Worley Custom Fabrication twin turbo plumbing kit, now I'm gonna start moving on to the last bit of this video where I start hooking up the catch can and exactly what the catch can is and what the hell it does, why I have one, and where it's located on the Mega Truck. So let's go hop back up on the front of the Mega Truck and I'll show you what we're talking about. But before we do that, I was just thinking there's probably a question y'all are probably asking yourselves that I wanna go ahead and get out in front of. Why would you do any other connection than the Vibrant Performance HD clamp system? Well, you wouldn't. You'd use it on everything. No, each clamp system really does have its own place that it really shines. For instance, on my truck, I've got all three. I've got the Vibrant Performance HD clamp system in certain areas. I've got V-band connections in certain areas. And I've got Worley Custom Fabrication boots in certain areas. Now, the reason why I have all three Now I've got the V-band connections right off both turbos. Now the reason for that is because those turbos, especially in a diesel application like we've got, and with the boost numbers where we're looking at hitting, it's going to be some hot air coming out of those turbos. We're going to cool it back down, hopefully with this cooling system, but with it getting so hot, there is a potential of melting those O-rings that are in that system, in that Vibrant Performance HD clamp system. So if you use a V-band connection, you eliminate that from being such a problem. So that's why we have V-bands right at the turbos. Then I've got my Vibrant Performance HD clamp system about midship. And then right where I connect actually onto the intercooler, I've got a boot. I've got a boot going to the intercooler and a boot coming off the intercooler. Now, why am I doing that? Reason for that is because the amount of movement that we think we're going to come across, especially with a mud truck type application. When I'm dropping into a mud hole, y'all be surprised how much that whole chassis twists and turns a little bit. And ours is built a bit more robust than most of them out there. Now, I'm sure there's much stronger frame systems out there, and there's definitely a hell of a lot of them that are a lot weaker than ours too. But even with how hardcore our subframe system is, that stuff still is tweaking and twisting a little bit, believe it or not. You can definitely tell now that we've got a roll cage in the truck, it adds even more to the rigidness of everything. So you can hear everything kind of tweaking and whining and twisting up a little bit, just with a little bit that I've ran the truck so far since we got her up and running. So all that being explained, all that movement needs to have some kind of give in it so you don't start breaking stuff. If you have something that's mounted rigidly and you try to introduce some movement to it, it's going to crack, it's going to snap, it's going to break, it's going to come out of alignment, and it's not going to be good. It's going to suck and it's going to ruin your weekend. So that's why in specific areas, you need to have plenty of give. So where I connected to the intercooler, that's where I've got boots. That was highly recommended by our boys over at Whirly Custom Fabrications. I was leaning towards putting the Vibrant Performance HD clamp system on those connection points too, but the people over at Whirly Custom Fab think with our application, it makes much more sense to run boots right there, just to allow as much movement as possible. Because as I was showing y'all, the HD clamp system does have movement to it. I mean, that stuff is able to move, but the boot allows it to move even more. So that's why I'm running all three clamp systems, and that's why other trucks are likely running probably all three clamp systems too, if not at least two of them. So that's why. All right, y'all, sorry, I had to hook up some lights. We don't have the luxury of the Mad Scientist home laboratory anymore. We're back to working outdoors. So I had to hook up some lights so y'all can see what I'm talking about. Now the catch can. Catch can is right here, and I kind of breezed over this just a little bit, this whole area. I actually took a piece of aluminum that I got from the Mad Scientist work laboratory. He hooked me up with that nice piece of aluminum there. Before, there was a giant hole in the fender well right there, and that was where the intake used to come into the old intake setup for the old engine. Well, now I no longer need that, so we sealed that all off with this nice piece of aluminum. So I through bolted it right here to the inner fender well, and that's what I used as a mounting point for putting this new fuse block. And that's also where I mounted this catch can. Now, what the catch can does, it collects any oil that might get thrown out of the motor when the RPMs are really ripping and she's really screaming. It provides a place for that expansion to take place. So it's got two connection points, one on either side, and they go to either side of the engine. If you follow the hosing, it's just regular rubber hose. It goes right up through here, right up over here, right up over yonder, and then it comes right on down there, right into, you kind of can't, so you can turn the light, can you see it? Let's see here. Bam, there you go. Goes right into the top of the head, right onto the valve cover. So that is the next thing that I start messing with in the time lapse as far as getting this engine hooked up inside the engine bay. Now, there wasn't a whole lot involved with hooking those up because those holes were already tapped and threaded in those valve covers from SoCal Diesel. So it's a 12A in fitting. I just had to get some push lock connectors. I actually had to get some standoffs a little bit so that way I had enough room to be able to get past the fuel lines and everything. Let me show you kind of what I'm talking about. So back underneath here, it looks like there is a lot going on, but nothing too crazy. So I've got all my high pressure fuel lines that are all down there. That's what all these silver metal lines are, like that right there, and all these ones under here. So I had to get a standoff in order to be able to raise that up a little bit. That's what that is. That's a little standoff to be able to allow this connection point to come off of the head a little bit. And then it's just a push lock connector with some rubber hose with some of that fiberglass coating on it, and just runs right on over here to this Moroso catch can. Now what that will do is, say I get really up in the RPMs and this engine's really ripping, we start throwing a little bit of oil, it'll allow a place for that oil to be able to expand too. It'll come through these hoses and collect in this catch can. It's not a big deal to empty out. You just go ahead, it's got these little wings down here. You just go ahead and spin this open, and say I had any oil collected in there, it would just drain right on out. So go ahead and we'll keep it nice and tight. And all I did was that piece of aluminum that I went ahead and attached to the inner fender well. This whole catch can actually comes with the whole clamp system, so I went ahead and attached the clamp system to the freaking aluminum and then attached the catch can to it, and we're ready to rock and roll. Plumbed her all in, and that's what this next little bit of time lapse is going to be about. So I actually didn't have the connectors that I needed to be able to hook the rubber hoses up to that catch can. All I had to do was hit up Vibrant Performance and get a couple of their 90-degree push lock connectors for the 12 AN hoses. Once I got those, I was able to go ahead and connect those vent lines up to that catch can, and we're ready to rock and roll. So that is going to wrap up the video for the initial hookup of our new motor. There's still a whole lot more we got to do. Well, it's technically already done, but there's a whole lot more I want to cover in upcoming Killin Resurrection videos. There's only going to be a few more episodes left of things that I really felt like needed explaining, or I kind of wanted to show you guys things that are out of the norm that we ran into, or things that are out of the norm that we did with this new engine setup. So please keep your eyes peeled, because more videos are going to be coming on the channel very, very soon. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you all learned a little bit of something. And again, thank you all very much for sticking with me through this process, because it has not been an easy one. But rest assured, we got that out of the way. So now we got plenty of content ready to start flooding that freaking channel, though. So hope you all enjoy the video. Thanks for watching, y'all. If y'all enjoyed the video and want to check out future videos, subscribe to our channel. Hit that button right there. While you're at it, hit the like button at the bottom of your screen. You can also check out our website, killin'itlifestyle.com. There you can follow the Killin It crew and order your own apparel so everyone will know you're killing it!